Hello, this is Breakfast with John Kay and Sally Nugent.
David Cameron tells the United Nations that Britain is ready to take military action against Islamic State militants.
Tomorrow, he'll ask Parliament to vote for airstrikes in Iraq.
My message today is simple. We are facing an evil against which the whole of the world should unite.
It's 10 minutes past 7. We'll get the weather and sport coming up in the next few minutes. But as we've been hearing, before that, the Prime Minister has been addressing the UN General Assembly overnight, and he's pledged that the British will support the fight against Islamic State militants.
We will discuss the challenges of that in just a moment. But first, let's hear what David Cameron had to say.
The UN Security Council has now received a clear request from the Iraqi government to support it in its military action against ISIL. So we have a clear basis in international law for action, and we have a need to act in our own national interest to protect our people and our society. Thank you.
Well, that is David Cameron talking at the UN overnight. And Sakhr Al-Makhadhi is a British Arab journalist who's worked extensively in the region and joins us now. Good morning.
Good morning.
David Cameron obviously there talking very much to a home audience, if you like, despite the fact he was speaking at the United Nations. Taking this a step further and talking a little bit about what might happen next, in your experience, how can Islamic State militants be targeted by airstrikes? In terms of infrastructure, what is there to attack?
Well, Islamic State, the so-called Islamic State, has built up what it claims is a state. They have got the infrastructure of a state. They're providing civilian services to populations that they're occupying, as well as the military operation. So they've got a whole infrastructure providing services to civilians. They've got a headquarters in Raqqa in Syria, which the airstrikes are going to be obviously targeting. But it's very difficult to deal with this problem, as has been shown in the past, from the air alone. And I don't think that you're going to deal with the problem. You're not going to completely eradicate Islamic State, but you're simply going to move them from one place to another.
In your experience of working so extensively in this region, what have you seen of their infrastructure?
Well, I haven't been inside Syria. I haven't seen the infrastructure firsthand in recent years. But I think that what they have been able to do is they have taken military equipment and cash as they have moved from one place to another. So what they've been able to do is sustain themselves. They've moved from military base to military base and take power by this rolling snowball effect, rather than having support from outside. And by that, they've been able to build up this power and expand their force across Syria and Iraq, and without any effective combating from inside of Syria or from Iraq, they've been able to expand really unlimited.
What David Cameron's talking about at the moment is only airstrikes and only on Iraq. A lot of people questioning that if you don't commit to ground troops and you don't commit to Syrian ground as well, this is pointless.
Well, exactly. And, you know, the Islamic State is a symptom of a greater problem. It didn't emerge all by itself. It emerged out of the Syrian civil war, and it emerged because the secular rebels who were fighting the regime of Bashar al-Assad really weren't getting the support that they were demanding from the international community. And because they weren't getting that support, the militants moved to sources of greater funding, of greater power, and of more effective fighting forces, which were the Islamist militants. And some of these fighters didn't even have that religious ideology. They moved across simply because they were the more effective fighting force. And when they did that, they became a bigger challenge to the international community, because the international community had really had a hands-off policy on Syria. And it was only when that problem morphed into an Iraqi problem, when they crossed the border into Iraq, that the international community decided that it was time to take action.
So will airstrikes be enough?
No, they won't. I think even committing ground troops to Iraq and Syria won't be enough. There is a greater problem here, and that is the Syrian revolution that the West has turned a blind eye to, has ignored for too long, hoping that it will be a domestic problem that will sort itself out. And we've now finally seen the evidence that the Syrian revolution is an international problem, and unless you deal with that at its source and come up with policies to deal with that militarily and politically, you're not going to deal with the Islamic State.
Sakhr Al-Makhadhi, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning.